Welcome, everybody, to the Leading IE Business Podcast. Today I have Chief Larry Gonzalez. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your super busy schedule to be here today. It means a lot to me. We met through, I was the president of the board at the Riverside Area Rape Crisis Center. You're the interim chief. A lot of jokes about all the events you're going to be doing, and I
Yeah,
see them all the time now. I know that held true. So again, thank you for being here. Today, I'd like to talk about some of the obvious issues that are going to come up. Where, homeless gets talked about, a lot of legislation. I want to give you time for that. But then I really want to dig into the business side of the police department, right? I
sure.
mean, you've got budgets, you've got um, tracking KPIs, your leadership style, that kind of stuff. So I think maybe if we, I don't want to say get it out of the way because they're very important topics. Um, so the homeless stuff, I see that you guys are doing a killer job and doing everything within your capacity to really make a difference for business owners. I had a lady show up here the other day. You guys are quick to respond and everything. So do you just want to take a second and kind of touch on that and like you do at every speaking engagement you go
Sure.
to?
Sure, absolutely. And thanks for having me on. It's my pleasure to be here. We realized early on, well, let me go back about 10 years. When I was an area commander, we go to community meetings a lot. Our city's broken into 4 different areas. They're called neighborhood policing centers. You go to community events on a regular basis, and it would hear the same thing. It was mostly traffic concerns throughout the city, which is still a big concern. And then about 10 years ago, it became the homeless issue, and it is what it is now. So some of the things we've had to do is just dedicate more resources to these problems. And it's not, I've said from the beginning, we're not going to arrest our way out of homelessness. And people would tell me all the time, hey, it's not a police problem. And I agree, it's not a police problem. However, if one of my officers is spending 50% of their shift dealing with homeless situations, then it becomes a police problem. So we've had to engage ourselves with not just the community, but other departments. So it's a collaborative effort that we've really fostered and brought forward. So you just think as recent as like 3 or 4 years ago, we had a couple of cops that worked Wednesday through Saturday on homeless issues. And that's turned into a whole different department through the city. I always think our new city manager, Mike Futrello, actually dedicated the resources and made a whole new department, the human and housing department. Michelle Davis oversees that. And I think it's somewhere like 35 or 40 employees that are in that department now that assist us in our efforts. So we don't just go out and arrest people. We go out with resources.
Right?
Yeah, we get the public safety engagement team, our CBAT team, which rides with clinicians. We have our public works out there to help clean up some of the mess. Code enforcement's also out there. So it's truly a collaborative effort within the city. And then we also had to engage our county partners because a lot of these facilities are run by the county that we're taking these folks to. So one of the other things we had to do, and this is when I first took over about 5 years ago as a chief, is kind of change the culture within our department. And what I mean by that is, officers would drive down the street. Let's say they go down University Avenue and they see a person disrobing or defecating in front of a business. And it got to the point where officers would see that and realize in their head, there's really nothing I can do about that. I can give this guy a ticket and nothing's going to change. He's not going to be incarcerated. He's not going to go away. He's going to be right back here doing the same thing.
And I just have to do a bunch of paperwork.
Yeah. And like I said, you might spend an hour and a half processing the person. He goes right back out the back door. Now, I understand that. I understand that's the reality. However, we had to change our culture and our mentality that we understand that our community is watching us. And if we do drive by that guy, they think that we're not paying attention. We need to make sure our community understands that we see what you see. We are also concerned. So we've had to make sure we stop, we deal with it. Now we have more resources and teams that can come out and help patrol officers where you might not want to, as a patrol officer, spend your time on that. You can call these teams out there that will help process that person. So we've made a conscientious effort to make sure we address these problems. We stop, we deal with it, because I think I've always said this, people, we're very lucky in the city of Riverside. we have a very supportive community. And I realized I talked to a lot of chiefs up and down the state and even out of state that don't have the same support.
Oh, really?
And that support wouldn't be not just from our community, but our city leadership, our council, city management team. They're very supportive. We wouldn't have that support if we weren't addressing these issues head on. So that's helped us the most.
Awesome. Yeah, and I mean, with my involvement in the chamber, it is literally every meeting somebody's asking about it, and you guys are constantly doing something to address it. But it's a huge problem that we don't want
Yes.
to get into, right? That your
Yeah.
side of it is helping businesses be open,
Correct.
right? I mean, from a business standpoint, just the ability to open your doors in the morning, if you have a retail shop, to people to be comfortable coming and going.
Yeah.
It seems basic, but it is a concern that I appreciate you addressing. Thank you for what you guys do with that. And again, I've had a few instances where I've had to call you guys to come out, and they've always been responsive. My favorite, just a quick funny story. There's this one guy that was always here, and one day a couple of your, I think 3 or 4 officers in 2 units, and I'm at my front door, and I just see this dude on a scooter go by, full leg extension, full sprint scooter, trying to get it away.
Yeah.
And I was just,
Yeah.
it's not comical they had to deal with it, but the scene,
Correct.
it
Yeah.
was comical. He was bolting. So thank you guys for what you do with that. The other piece that I think, and I mentioned you earlier that Angel Sanchez, Phoenix Technology, was on my last podcast, and one of the things that came up was business owners' involvement in the community with legislation, um, just being active in the community with the chamber, with the council,
Yes.
with legislation. So, and I know there's some legislation items that are important to you, that maybe business owners should be mindful of and be engaged in. So, if you want to take a second to cover those things.
Yes. And you're absolutely right. I know we were talking before we went on the air here about. Well, first of all, I'll just go back. I wear a few different hats besides being the chief here. I'm also the president of the Riverside County Chiefs of Police. So I represent all the Riverside County Chiefs of Police and the sheriff. And we have our own association. So when it comes to legislative matters, I'll spend a lot of time talking to our politicians, our legislators, whether it's here in district or in Sacramento, talking about different bills that they might want to pass that, and we want to make sure say, hey, we either strongly support this or we oppose this. And what I always try to tell, like when I visit a chamber group or a business group, your voice is huge. When I go to Sacramento, I just came back last night from being there yesterday. Um, they know what they know what the chiefs and the sheriffs are going to say about every bill. They know how whether we're going to oppose it or support it. But if we are opposed of something and I can get my whole chamber of commerce to write a letter as well, they will listen to our business owners more than they will listen to us. I mean, they listen to us, but when you can hear the community basically acknowledging the fact that what we said is true, and we bring up data, statistical data, as well as anecdotal information. The story you just told the other day, we'll bring up something like that to try to make it a reality for them so they understand. I understand our legislation, and one of the things that we talk about, you look in the state of California, it's overwhelmingly Democratic, right? Or Democrats. So whether you have 80 assembly members, which I think 62 are Democrat, and 40 senators, 32 are Democrat. The first thing I say when I get in these offices is, can we all agree that we're talking about a nonpartisan issue? And they all say yes. And they're true. It doesn't mean that if they're Democrat, they're always going to vote this way, and if they're Republican, they're always going to vote this way. We just want to make sure we can educate them. You got to realize there was a 2-year legislative cycle this last 2 years, and they're looking at 3,000 bills a year. There's no way they can.
And these bills are hundreds of pages.
Yes,
Huge.
yes. I mean, and from the full spectrum, so we want to educate them. It's kind of like I do when I go to community groups. Hey, this is the law. Here's why you got burglarized 3 times last week by the same guy and he keeps getting out, right? Or this person's smoking crack in front of your business. Why isn't he in jail? Well, here's why they're not in jail. Here's the laws. Here's as much as we can possibly do. So I want to make sure our community understands that we will do everything we possibly can, but nothing that we can't. And they understand that. But whenever we can encourage their help when it comes to writing a letter or talking to a legislator about possibly changing some of the laws, that would help us with our effort.
I know that a specific bill, the chamber's end of the year, like main board meeting or whatever, I believe that's where it was, where UNPA Hestrin spoke.
Correct.
And specific to like kind of the catch and release. I'm not sure what the right terminology there is, like kind of the catch and release policy. That there's some changes you want to make there. Is that something? What happened with that, or is that something that's still active?
Yes, that's really the biggest thing that's active right now. And it's the homeless theft reduction. It's an initiative by the DA's Association. And what it does is it basically brings back some laws on the books that we've had for years that we lost over the years since Prop 47's been. You've heard about Prop 47 a lot. That's usually what's talked about. Now, there are some things about Prop 47 that are okay. We're okay with. I know I've been on the job for 31 years. I know when I was a brand new cop, I put people in prison for an ounce of methamphetamine. It was sales, and they would go to prison for a couple, 3 years. I can agree with, hey, maybe we don't need to send that guy to prison anymore. But if we're making stops of guys that have 1,000 fentanyl pills on them and they get cited out,
And one will kill somebody
and
potentially.
one can kill you. Yeah, exactly. We need to find somewhere in the middle that we can at least catch the big fish and stop them from peddling these drugs out on the street.
Yeah.
And basically killing. I think we were at 400 overdoses last year, just in the city of Riverside. So we need something in place. Like I said at the very beginning, it's not about arresting everybody, but this initiative that DAs are talking about would bring back some tools that we could use to help with this. After three, it would be misdemeanor because they changed the law from hard drugs. They used to be possession was a felony. Now they're misdemeanors, such as fentanyl, methamphetamine, heroin. If you get arrested 3 times and convicted 3 times, the 4th time needs to be some consequences. And with this initiative, it'd either be you got 2 choices: you either go to mandatory rehab, fix yourself, or you're going to be incarcerated. One of those two. And we've had that in place in the past with drug court and these other propositions that were here in the 90s and early 2000s that helped us with that. But we need to get that back because, like I said, you just go down the streets of Riverside, you'll see people that are unable to care for themselves. And the large majority of the homeless population, it's a huge substance abuse problem.
Yeah.
So, but this initiative would help. And the other thing is with serial thieves, organized retail crime. There's, if you there used to be a law, 666 of the Penal Code, said that if you had 3 misdemeanor convictions, the 4th one was a felony. So we're trying to get that back to where right now, as it sits, threshold's $950. You could go out shoplifting every day for the next 100 days. Tell a
story about a guy that got busted after like 6.
Yeah,
crazy number like that.
The snake burglar, they called him. I think he pled out ultimately to 59 burglaries. Those are felonies, burglaries.
Oh.
And came into court, pled out, and I think he got probation with an ankle monitor.
With
59 felonies. Yeah. So something needs to change on that front. Like I said, the youngster that goes in and steals something from a grocery store, and we're not talking about putting that guy in prison, but you do it 100 times in a row, and in 100
or a career path are two very different choices. Right?
And the way the laws are now is, like I said, you could shoplift $940 worth of merchandise and get caught every day, and you'll get cited out. And the 100th time you do it, you're going to get cited out again. So we need to do something with that.
So as a business owner, I didn't realize even how much the chamber was involved. I've been very only for the last few years that I've really started to be involved in the community, understand kind of how things are working or whatever. And the chamber is very focused on very business specific things like payroll changes or wage changes or whatever, right? And on those, so I get information from them about those kind of things, and they ask us to send letters, that kind of stuff too. Is there a resource or a newsletter or anything that a business owner can sign up to kind of get that information from you and support you in that way?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. In fact, I'm going, I think it's next week, the week after, to the executive board meeting for the chamber. Nick Adcock, since he took over, he's been outstanding. I've had some times when I'm driving home from the airport from Sacramento, I call him on the way home and say, hey, man, I need to talk to your folks about some legislation that's coming through. So yes, they can help. And a lot of it's just getting updated, whether it be an email from me to the chamber group or I present to them. I like going in person sometimes just to tell them this just happened. I got back yesterday. These are the issues. But letters of support are always good, or opposition if that is the case. Right. But something to where our legislators hear from our business community, because a lot of these things like the serial thieves or the Theft Reduction Act, this would help them. This would help them survive. I hate hearing stories that people are leaving our city, and it's sad when you see some people, and there's a business owner that we both know very well that paid, I want to say $18,000 repairing glass the last couple of years for his business, and ultimately said, I can't stay here anymore. I got to leave. I got to shut down my business. I hate hearing that.
Yeah, yeah, that's ridiculous. So the best way to kind of stay informed is through the chamber then?
Yeah, the chamber's a great resource because they're not afraid to go out and talk about legislation issues. And I try to make it specific to the business community. If I'm going to talk to the chamber, I don't need to talk to them about necessarily uh, whether they want to get rid of our canines anymore. That's something
Yeah,
that I can do with other groups. But when it comes to theft reduction or even the narcotics related offenses, because a lot of those they go hand in hand, um, that we can get their support on that. But I try to make it very specific to business owners, and then get the endorsement or support from the chamber as well.
from a business standpoint, something that I want to do with you today that um, hopefully is maybe a little different than interviews you normally have is just from a business standpoint. I really want to try to get a feel for. I mean, you're essentially the CEO of a very large business. You
Yeah.
are, right? Not
Yes.
title, but you are the chief. Um, you have people under you that are doing your HR, your hiring, your firing. You have metrics, you have budgets, you have public relations, which is like marketing,
Yes.
all that kind of stuff. So I don't really have a structured approach to how I want to talk to you about this, but I did want to kind of just try to have a conversation and feel out a little bit about the business side of it, right? Like um, it's I know it's very different. Like your budget concerns, you have to go ask for that money, get approval for that money. I have
Correct.
to go earn that money. It's very, where we get it from is different, but then how we apply it, I imagine is very similar. So maybe starting there, um, the, how do you approach the budget each year? I imagine you have a team, but I
Yeah.
imagine you get a wild spreadsheet or
Yeah.
listing that you go through. So, is there anything from a budget standpoint, from your experience in 31 years and many different levels of the business, right? That maybe you could share with our viewers that might apply to their business.
Sure. And you're right. I mean, so your police department is at full staff. We're 432 police officers and about 200 civilian or professional staff. Those civilian staff is like dispatchers and records clerks and some parking patrol or parking enforcement or traffic enforcement um, folks that work for us. So first of all, I realize that we're the largest department in the city, so we have the largest budget.
Hmm.
And you're always concerned when, you know, uh, by the way, we're going to council this month. I think it's this month or July to get the final sign up on our budget, right? So we do 2-year budget cycles.
Okay.
We're right around $150 million for our budget. And I think most people that deal with budgets realize the majority of those in law enforcement are 90, 91, 92% are personnel costs. So if you want to do an exercise where, hey, we need to cut 10% of everybody's budget, that means we're going to lose people.
Yeah.
That's the only way we could do it because we don't spend a lot of money on other stuff other than personnel. So we try to work well with all the other departments. I realize it's difficult if a council doesn't want to approve something for public safety. They're probably going to get some heat off of that, So, but I don't want to ever exploit that or
Right.
use that to our advantage. It's like, hey, I want to work well with, hey, we want to stay within our budget. We're only going to ask for things that we absolutely need that's going to help public safety in our community.
Yeah.
So, we try to we always do. We always come in at our budget number. At the beginning, sometimes they'll say, hey, ask for whatever you want to ask for, then we'll cut it down. I try not to even ask for a lot more. This is what we need, and I've been very fortunate and I'm very thankful that we do have a supportive council that has not, like during 2020 and the defunding, I didn't get a lot of that. I didn't get a lot of pressure to. There's always a couple people out there that are going to say that, but
Yeah, but our city, like you said earlier, I think our city is really behind
very
our
supportive.
police department.
So I think as long as they can see, to see the evidence, if you will, to use a police term, that hey, this money's well spent. It's going to be for actual personal costs, or a couple of years ago we bought 2 new helicopters. That's a force multiplier for us. They do an outstanding job, and they solve a lot of crimes that way.
I didn't even recognize them for a while. I was like, I wonder what these new chips
Yeah,
are. And then I was talking to our buddy Leo.
Yeah.
Sort of, and I was like, he's like, yeah, we got some
Yeah.
new ones. I was like, oh, that's cool.
And that was a big ask, you know, and I
Yeah.
knew it was a big ask, but I made sure I laid it all out to where here, this is why it's going to help us. We've had an air unit for 50 years. These are old, they're antiquated helicopters that we have. We can't find parts for them. We need new air support.
And I
And
think you guys got a lot more flight time out of these new ones too. Is that correct or not?
yeah, I think
Less.
we can stay up even longer in these helicopters. The technology is incredible in these helicopters now. The way, you know, back in the day, you know, helicopters were circling this city at about 500-600 feet all day, and that gets annoying for some people's neighborhoods. They can stay at a much higher altitude, so it's not so noisy in certain
With better
neighborhoods.
like equipment for
Yeah,
better
track the
video
technology, the
equipment
mapping
tracking.
systems that they have in there. You know, they can lock in on a car pursuit and basically track it without even having to, you know, back in the day, they were looking out of the window with helicopter with the binoculars, you know,
Oh, wow.
calling it out on the radio.
The last ones you just sold me,
No,
right?
no, but you
But even
know,
then they weren't
yeah,
tracked.
not
They
like
like lock onto now.
they can lock onto it and, you know, the whole mapping system, the addresses, the streets are all identified for them. So, you know, usually when we have a car chase or car pursuit, the ground units will initiate it, right? And, after a while, once the helicopter's on board, they take over. They can concentrate on their driving and their radio communications, where the air unit now has the ability to call it out.
Are they calling like they're making a left on Central?
Yeah, they do all that, and everything's captured on video. So, yeah, it's impressive.
I was talking. This is I don't know if I should admit it or not, but I was talking to Leo. Um, I played a video game for a while. I don't know if you know what GTA
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
or whatever. And there's a server where you like role play or something, right? And I was the I had two characters. One bought and sold helicopters and did flight school, and the other one was a police officer that flew the helicopter. So
yeah,
like very rudimentary, but um, in my mind I kind of picture like because that's what we would when we got out as the pilot when I got on we'd be like, oh, he's turning left,
yeah.
so I could see where and what makes me think about that was the driver, even in a video game, the driver trying to keep up and also make those calls and be accurate with it. It can be very distracting, right?
Yes,
So I can see where that's very real. And then since I'm recording now, you did say you could get me up for a ride along, right?
yeah,
Now
yes.
it's
Fly
officially on
along,
record. Fly
exactly.
along. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, fly along. Okay, so so with the new budget, I know you talk a lot about your personnel. Is there going to be expansion in the budget so you can get more of like these motor resources and other resources?
You know what? You know, honestly, Austin, what saved us tremendously, and I thank the citizens of this city every chance I get, that in 2016 they passed Measure Z, which really made us whole.
Yeah,
That's the only reason we can do what we're doing
but
right
it's
now.
sunsetting, right?
It's still got 20 years, I
Oh,
think.
that long?
Yeah, it's
Oh,
got a
okay.
ways to go, but we still have to prepare for that. And what Measure Z gave us was the extra bot to get us back up to where we need to be, you know. Um, and then also with that is equipment and vehicles.
Yeah.
So we're pretty good on our budget already. I don't need to ask for more because we have that set money through Measure Z to pay
Okay.
for police units, the equipment to outfit an officer, a new officer, with
Yeah.
all the stuff they have on their belt and all the stuff that goes with being a new police officer. And it's crazy now. You think with technology, that's where we spend most of our money is technology.
So it's not cheap. I imagine you guys have crazy subscription costs
Yep.
for
Yep.
your
Well,
software.
first it was storage because we have body worn cameras on every officer, and just the storage of
That's
that is
insane. Yeah.
expensive.
Yeah.
And then to operate those, to maintain those,
I mean, it
we
has to
have
be super secured and
correct,
redundant, and like it can't just be a normal server you're dumping stuff on.
correct. Yeah. So between all the tech, I laugh because I know I'm sure the chief when I first got hired, the big cost was ammunition, guns, bulletproof vests, things like that they're minimal now.
Yeah,
If
but
you
you
look at
like
compared to to what we're paying
yeah, a
for
300
technology.
block versus a
Yeah.
$20,000 server upgrade or
Yeah.
something like that. Right? I can
Yeah.
see that. My father-in-law, Dr. Madison, what treats a lot of your guys, and this is hearsay. So, but I know it sounded like back.
The chiropractor?
Yeah,
That's your father-in-law?
yeah.
I went to him. Yeah, I
You
know.
do? Yeah,
Yeah.
he
I didn't know
loves
that.
you guys. He treats a lot of you guys.
Yeah, yeah, right off Arupa, right? He's yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But he was kind of hearing rumblings years and years ago, maybe I think maybe under Chief Diaz, which it's not on him, but like that you guys were even having a lot of like your vehicles and stuff like that where you didn't have the money for maintenance for ads and like some were just sitting and just a lot of issues budgetary wise before Measure Z that were really preventing you to do your job.
He's
So
absolutely right. That's true. We had it so bad to where so we have three shifts. Day shift is 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. Swing shift is 2 p.m. to midnight, and then graveyard is I was using military term 2200. It's 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. We had guys that had to come in early from their shift to give their car up because the other guy we didn't have enough cars to put him out
which
on
is no
patrol.
time to
Yeah,
check it or
they
like
wouldn't even be
it's
able to
just
finish their
running
shift
nonstop. Oh,
out on the street because they had to give their car up. So thank goodness we've got past that. Well, we got then we had a little bump after COVID or towards the end of COVID because Ford wasn't making Explorers fast enough. And they were so high in demand, and then everybody's trying to order, so we're trying to order them as many as we can to where we're ready, so we don't get caught where we in that situation again where we have to have guys come in early to give up their card for
yeah.
the next shift to use.
On a monthly basis, trying to keep it kind of on the business angle. How often do you have budget review meetings? How do you handle without every question I ask? I understand that if it's with what you guys do, if there's parts that you're not comfortable talking about because what you
Sure,
guys are
no,
fine. But do you guys have like I'm sure money spent through many departments, and it kind of has to trickle up to you.
yes.
How do you kind of on a monthly basis handle oversight for your budgets? How often does it come to you, or how much do you rely on the guys below you? If somebody had a business of the magnitude of yours, like how would they kind of structure that budget monitoring and keeping within it?
Well, first of all, when I talked about civilian staff, our highest ranking, either civilian, we call them professional staff, non-sworn. Our highest ranking professional staff person is Brandy Becker. She's basically our CFO. She's categorized as a police administrator. She's the money lady. She's in charge of our budget, and she's a direct report to the administrative deputy chief, which is Bruce Blumdahl. So on a monthly basis, they're doing every month. You're trying to strategize. You're trying to figure out how many cars we're going to need, and there's always things that come up. Whether they're crashing too many cars one month,
Yeah.
or some software goes down that we need for our body worn cameras. There's always some type of issue. So they meet on that regularly. Now we're going to hopefully get our budget approved at in the July council meeting. So it'll slow down a little bit. You got approved for the next 2 years.
2 years.
So, and it seems like it's a little less stressful when you're on a 2-year budget. If you're on that second year, after the first year of a 2-year budget, it seems like a lot of it's rollover stuff. Hey, we're just going to do the same thing.
Yeah, renew it.
But after the 2 years, you really try to strategize on how you're going
Yeah.
to set your budget.
Is that what you mean by it slows down? Like going up to creating the new budget, presenting the new budget. There's a lot of
Yes.
pulling data, checking things, and
Yes.
then once it's approved, now you're just monitoring, staying within the budget, and is that what you mean by slow down? Okay.
Absolutely. And just, and we're very transparent with our budget. The whole city is. I think, Christy Thomas is our finance director. I think she did, it's up to 4 or 5 budget presentations, starting with like safety, wellness, and youth, to the finance committee, to the budget engagement commission, to now council. And I think it's somewhere around 50, 60 slides that she went through and just broke it all down for them. So there's a lot of preparation work in that.
Yeah.
I'm sure she might want to take a vacation after the budget gets because she's been busy. But it's really a team effort because we're all trying to, present our departments, to where we're staying fiscally responsible and only asking for what we need. And
so procedurally, it's probably I imagine there's specific reports that people are individually populating that are kind of being collected, and kind of amassing it into. And I'm sure at some point you can go through, but I imagine on a daily basis you're not looking at a 5,000 line item individual spends. It's categorized and kind of looking.
And Brandy might be doing that. Brandy does that on a regular basis. But if something comes up that I need to know about, she'll definitely let me know about it.
Yeah.
For instance, we had a late minute request this year, which I think it's easy to justify. If you've heard about real time crime centers, which are, I'll try to basically summarize as quick as I can. It's taking existing cameras that the city owns, which I think they're like 1,500 throughout the city of Riverside, and we're paying a software company to tie in camera footage from our cameras, but we also want to be able to tie in the cameras that are at the Brockton Arcade or the Canyon Crest Town Center or the RUSD School District.
Oh, from a business standpoint, I think I remember you guys talking about this. A business can elect
Correct.
to give you that access.
Correct.
One or all cameras, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like you can only have them outside. Is that the
That's all
case?
we're asking for. And that's one of the things, because I was a little concerned as we started put up cameras. We also have, I think you've heard of the term flock camera systems. Those are license plate reader
Yeah.
cameras that are distributed throughout the city. Um, and when you talk about a real-time crime center, those are huge for something like that, because you can commit a robbery in Moreno Valley and start coming through the city of
As long as you have
Riverside,
the plate number,
and
it's
these
watching.
flat cameras will pick up and hit in our city.
Nice.
So this real-time crime center software, like when they first came into play, I know Palm Spring or Redlands got one pretty quick, Chino got one pretty quick, um, Beverly Hills, they're expensive. They were millions of dollars. Now you can get a software company that can do it for a fraction of that cost, that could actually tie in these camera systems with our police department. And like you said, yes, the business owners can opt in to say, hey, you can have my footage. We're still in an old school thing where if you got burglarized last night and you had a camera
Yeah.
footage of it,
Yeah.
we would just go, hey, can you give me the footage of your camera after a police officer came here, after you
Yeah.
realize that. And
2 states away if it was a
yeah,
picture
absolutely. And you finally realize what happened. We get the camera footage. Now I would probably identify this guy. Instead of that night, you get a hit, it goes in, and then all of a sudden we can get up on, if the alarm went off, let's say, we could be able to get up on that camera footage real time.
Is it like I have a Ring camera on my front door? Or does it need to be? Is there a specific?
Ring is also involved with these software companies. So, and that's been a big thing for us too, where we go out and get Ring cameras are incredible. I mean, we've solved so many crimes with getting Ring cameras where, and most of the time, 99% of the time, the residents and business community will give us that footage. And hey, we're talking about a guy just ripped off this.
Yeah.
Can you give us that footage?
Yeah.
But it would be nice. I use the example, if you remember a couple years ago, we had a string of home invasion robberies throughout our city. And there was like 8 in 2 weeks, and everybody was scared to death, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
There was a lot of those neighborhoods they hit where there was really only one way in and one way out of that neighborhood. If we had these camera systems in place in real-time crime center, probably would have had somebody in custody that night,
Yeah.
because they would have been tripping on the they would have been notifying us that here's a license plate that was there, because it
Flock and boom.
flock and boom, there you go.
Interesting. How does somebody go about opting into that program
Well,
once you have it? I guess.
so I'm going to council in July about this software company. We're actually asking for Fusus, is the name, FUSUS. It's like, I think I'm asking for $175,000, which is minimal
I mean,
if you look at it.
software. That's you can't build an app for that. So.
But a lot of these software, what they will do is they have a PR component when they sell you. If we buy them, if we go with them, they also have a PR team that goes to neighborhoods with our officers and say how it works. And here's how you would sign up. And I think there's from what I understand, there's 2 different ways. You can opt in and say, yes, the police department can have my camera footage. And the other way to opt in too is, yes, the police department can have my camera footage and share it with everybody. There's 2 ways. You can just give them us to solve
Like
our
you can use
crime.
this internally, but don't share it.
Correct.
Okay.
Or you can, let us put it on a Facebook feed if we needed to, or something like that.
Well, if they let you, right? But
Yeah.
It's all another conversation.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Okay, so hopefully, I can't see why city council wouldn't approve that. I mean,
I'm very optimistic. Like I said, it's, and one thing I thought about was cameras, and I know every once in a while you hear, the big brother concerns, and I get that, but you hit on it earlier. I just want to follow up with it real quick. Is these cameras will be triggered if a 911 call or a crime has occurred.
Yeah, you're not just in there watching.
We're not watching. Yeah, yeah. So and also want to be very clear, in the state of California, there's no facial recognition capabilities on it. So if you come in with your blue shirt on, you have a backpack on, it's gonna be, we're searching for a white male or with no hair with a backpack and a blue shirt. And that, with AI capabilities, that could really condense the search down and give us.
Will there be is that something on the future, the kind of facial recognition?
Well, I don't know about the state of California. That's kind of like a deal breaker, it seems like, which we're okay with
the
that.
technology exists, but it's more of a
yes,
privacy issue.
And from what I understand, there are some states that do allow it, but we want to make sure that our citizens were clear that we're not going to use that. But the way these software companies work now, it's so advanced that I think we'll do pretty well with what we have.
Nice standpoint, right? As I said, you're the CEO of this huge company now. What is your leadership style, right? And how do your leadership style the culture that you try to create within the organization, and that you impart into your leadership team. Is that something you can talk about a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's and it changes, especially in law enforcement. I guess in 2024 today, as we said, I think I've more become a transformational leader, more so than otherwise. When you talk about transformational leadership, it's not necessarily barking out orders or direction, but it's working collaboratively with different groups to get the desired effect, right? To work to get to our common goal. And I've always felt that was a strong suit of mine, to where I'm obviously not the smartest guy at this department, but I'm going to surround myself with people that are that I can use like to solve problems,
Yeah.
and not just in our department, but our community members, our other department heads, that we can work collaboratively to get our goal accomplished. But there are some things in law enforcement, as we talk about leadership, you could have a tactical type leadership in certain situations. You have a officer involved shooting we just had recently. When you get out on the scene, you need a guy that's going to bark out orders.
Yeah.
It's a dictatorship.
Yeah.
That's the quasi-military part of this. Is, hey, I don't care how you feel about this. You sit over there or you take this, or you start setting up tape, start giving out an APR, start talking. Do this, and it has to be more of a tactical or a dictatorship, basically.
Yeah.
And then sometimes another leadership style is strategic. That's forecasting, whether it's budget preparation or personnel or a reorg within the organization. We're looking at doing something like that. Like I said, our personnel is increasing. Our manpower is increasing, so that will require a reorganization of the department. So,
right.
But I think it changes.
Yeah.
But I would say, as I sit here today, it's more transformational style.
And then is culture sorry, my phone is one of the things that Angel and I talked a lot about, is culture. And in my business, I almost was like, listen, hippity dippity.
Yeah.
And I was wrong, right? Culture is really important, and culture in the sense of how your people think, how they feel, whatever. Do you guys have any like defined culture that you impart in your people? And if so, kind of what is it and how do you maintain it?
Yeah. Well, culture is a very real thing. I guess it would start with our core values that we talk about, and it's right underneath our badge and our patch. It's humility and grit. Humility. Being a humble person. Being able to recognize that you can reach out to people to get a common goal done. You don't. It's strength without arrogance, and that's humility. And then grit is just something that says, "Hey, we're gonna like whether it's a homeless situation, you call 911, we will be there. We're going to always respond." It's a person that never gives up and tries to get that goal accomplished, even if they have to break down barriers to do it. That's the grit part of it. But when you come to a culture, I think we have a good reputation at the police department as far as we're still proactive. And a lot of agencies, whether it's political reasons or community outcry, have given up on that, to where, when I say proactive, making traffic stops, turning over stones, looking for bad guys, if you will. So we're lucky in the fact, I would say, for the entire Inland Empire, both counties, Riverside and San Bernardino, that our officers are still being proactive. They're trying to stop crime before it happens. So you have to have to keep that culture, but at the same time, what I'm huge on is making sure that we maintain the trust of our community. Ever heard that over and over? Trust is earned, right? It's earned.
Yeah.
It's not given. And it's the constant thing we have to do on a daily basis, is make sure we develop those community relationships. Because, I go back, probably the biggest tragedy we've had in our department was the Taisha Miller shooting in 1998. And at a time where we really needed to engage our community, we didn't have those contacts in our community back then. And it was like too little too late. So we've worked diligently over the last 20 some odd years to make sure we're represented everywhere, whether it's a neighborhood watch group, a grassroots group, a chamber group, school districts.
Podcast.
Yeah, your podcast, anything, just to maintain those relationships. That way, we're represented everywhere. So when you get a 2020, whether it's a pandemic or the George Floyd incident, our community knows their police department. And we didn't get beat up as bad, as some agencies did, with destroying property and destroying the city. And And now it didn't mean we didn't still have to re-educate a lot of folks in Riverside that, hey, we don't police this way. This isn't
Yeah.
the way we do it here. We want to make sure you know that your agency doesn't act this way. But trust is a big thing, and I think just trying to maintain that, um, so our community, you know, they love their police department. I hope they do. And then internally, we also have to make sure that we're holding our employees accountable. We want to make sure if a person should not be a police officer, that they're not going to be a police officer. If we get complaints on certain things, we're going to investigate them. If there's a use of force in our community, in our department, there's like 6 layers of supervision on every time we use force on somebody. And that's another misconception, because the only one that seems to make it to the news is the one that looks bad. And I just presented to one of the groups a couple weeks ago. I think it was a human relations committee. We use force 1/10 of what 1/10 of 1% of the time.
Wow.
When we contact, you got about 300,000 radio calls a year, 100 and some odd actual contacts, and you think we don't use it all the time. We only use it when we have to use it. So, but being transparent in that way, I don't know if we throw the transparent word out a lot, but it's huge for us to say, hey, we have nothing to hide. Here's our policies. We had an officer involved shooting a month ago or whatever, or last week. I'm going to do a video on it. I'm going to give you all the circumstances surrounding it. And here's whether it doesn't look good or not, we're going to be transparent and show you that maintains the trust. But I just finishing up internally is holding officers accountable. I want to make sure our employees are happy, because sometimes I was just talking about this with a chief yesterday. I said, you get so involved in, community groups. I want to always make sure I'm there for our community. I want to make sure I'm there for my city council, my city manager. Don't ever, ever forget about your troops. They're the ones that are doing all the work. So I try to make a priority to, whether it's just go to roll call or go BS with some of the guys outside the station, whether they're coming to Orange Street or just visit different stations we have in our city, to make sure they know that I'm here for them. I support them, and I want them to know that, because you need to maintain that. Like I said, I don't want to ever get too busy with everything else where don't forget about the guys that are doing the work.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, for 31 years, I think you said, right, that you come up through the force.
Correct.
So you felt each side of that, right, as a foot soldier, so to speak.
Yes.
And as leadership. So I'm sure that's got to help your thought process when you're being mindful of your guys and your gals, your team.
I think it lends a little bit of credibility. Like if there's pros and cons there, as far as being an inside guy, if you will. I'm the first inside chief we've had in a long time.
Yeah.
For me was LAPD. Before him was LAPD. Before him was the San Diego PD guy. And sometimes you need an outside person to come in. I'm thankful for my predecessor, Sergio Diaz, that he left us in a good enough position to where an inside guy could take over.
Right.
But it's nice to be able to talk to these guys or go into roll call and say, hey, man, I sat in the same seats as you guys did, worked the same areas. I know some of even the same family members you arrested,
Right.
But
you touched on kind of like the BLM right times. Just as a thank you, I have a good friend, Vince Torres. I'm sure you know him, Bullseye Sport now.
Yeah, absolutely. I just saw him the other day at a meeting, actually.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
He was a business owner with a firearms retail store during a time where people were taking advantage of those riots to take advantage of it, right? To steal and stuff like that. But I could tell that he trusted that you guys had the businesses back. You guys, they patrolled. I mean, they were out there protecting their stuff too, but you guys did a really good job of being there for the business owners in the community, making sure they were safe. I imagine you put everybody out on the street during
Yes.
some specific times they were expecting things. So just thank you for that, and just to be able to hear, I didn't have any concerns, but nobody's going to come into this place, right? But like the gun store.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and they were really comfortable. That you
I appreciate that.
Background. So, ability kind of leads into KPIs, key performance indicators, something that's really important to a business. What are some of what are the top 5, let's say, performance indicators that you as the chief have to be really mindful of for the business, for the RPD?
Well, I would say my number one concern is mental wellness of our officers. because of what they see every day and what they do. And I made this a priority even when I first took over as far as our strategic plan. If you go back to like the 21st century policing model, they have 6 anchors, and number 6 was mental wellness of officers. I said that needs to be like number 1. These guys and gals that are working for us, they need to be taken care of. And they need to have outlets because they see things on a daily basis that nobody sees. It's not always like that, but they see the worst of the worst. I still haven't had a 911 call that we responded to yet. They just want to tell us we're doing a great job. It just doesn't work that way. So mental wellness is a big thing, and it's really incumbent. One of the most important ranks we have is sergeant. That sergeant is the supervisor over a crew of guys or gals that work in our patrol division to constantly monitor, make sure your folks are okay and they're getting what they need, whether it's just the equipment they need or if it's time off that they need. Because it gets tough sometimes where, like you just said, in 2020, we were on tactical deployment. We were 12 on, 12 off for 10 days, so nobody had a chance to go home.
Yeah.
But I've made it a priority to just make sure there's avenue. We have a mental wellness program now. We have quiet rooms. We have yoga classes. You have jujitsu classes. That's all part of this funding that we receive from the state to make sure our officers are doing okay. I remember being at a meeting before where, this was on the West End a couple of years ago, and I was listening to, it was about homelessness mostly, and they were talking about this person that's disrobing and this person that's defecating and this person, and they gave me like 4 or 5 examples. And I stopped them after the 5th one. I said, I understand, and we're always going to respond, but I also want to make sure I'm taking care of our officers because that could just be one officer's day before noon. Those 5 incidents that you're talking about that happened over several month period could be one day, so I always want to make sure that they're being taken care of. And then as far as performances too, the first thing you want to ask is if you see a dip in performance, before you get quick to do a performance improvement plan or discipline or something like that, is to bring them in and say, hey, where their head's at right now. And that's part of the mental wellness as well. So we want to make sure we're in constant communication with them. And the other thing is what's different about law enforcement is, and a lot of people don't realize this, there's not many jobs like this. I can't think of any really where if you have a complaint against you and for whatever, discourtesy, rudeness, could even be excessive force, whatever, and we call you in, and let's just say it could even result in a criminal allegation for an excessive force. If I call you in and ask you questions and you say, I don't want to, like if it's you right now, you'd say, I'm a lawyer. I'm not going to talk to you. Okay. They're not going to talk to you.
Yeah.
Right. But in the police world, we can order that officer to talk because we're going to do an administrative investigation anyway. There's not many jobs to say, hey, you either talk to us or you're insubordinate, you can get terminated. So they're going to talk. You're held accountable. That's one way we hold people accountable is, and luckily it doesn't happen a lot, but not many jobs are like that. I don't think people understand that officers are held to a higher standard, that if they get questioned about something, they need to answer because it could be their job. Another way to hold people accountable, and we do random audits on this, is the body-worn camera footage. We do random audits where sergeants with their crew of people, they will just say, hey, how did Austin's last 5 traffic stops go? And he'll look at them. Because you might get a complaint and say, hey, let's see, is there something going on here? Either, yes, you were in fact rude and you might need some help or training, or it's, there's no merit to it. But either way, we're going to look into it.
Right.
So there's several key ways to hold people accountable. But it's a delicate balance because you want to make sure they're doing okay too, because it's a tough occupation.
They're already dealing with.
Correct.
I can see where you would need to strike that balance.
Yeah.
Which in a different degree, businesses need to do that as well. Like you want performance, you want output, you want profitability. You know what I mean?
Correct.
That's the business's priorities. And again, I keep referencing Angel because he was just the last podcast, but those things are gonna be improved, or even if they're not, like if you have people that are unhappy and more stressed, it's bad for them. It's probably bad for the business. So it's really a win-win to have a culture that's mindful of your people.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm learning more about. I mean, I've only got one guy in house right now. I've got 6 remote people. But those are things that I'm actively trying to be mindful of. So,
yeah.
You're taking over a beast that's been running for a long time. So a lot of those are ingrained and you have to continue them. But what a system.
I just think another key component of that too is self-assessment for your department. Always look at ways to get better.
Yeah.
Because you can get lackadaisical, you can get complacent, and hey, we're fine. We're Riverside. We're good. We do this good. We do that good.
Yeah.
You go to conferences sometimes, and you'll say, we'll listen to whether it's a national conference or a state conference. They'll say, well, we're doing this new program. Like, well, we've been doing that for 3 years, right? Or we're doing this. Like, oh, we already do that. We're good.
Yeah.
That's when you get in trouble because you want to make sure that you're constantly reevaluating your organization and how can we get better.
Yeah. When you're doing the best is something like my business pre-COVID. We don't make millions or anything, but we were doing well. I didn't have to worry about it. The bills getting paid, checks cleared. You know what I mean? Like all
Yeah.
this. And I got complacent. I got real comfortable. I didn't push. I was like, we're killing it. And then one little step up and you've lost momentum and like we
Yeah.
took a big hit with all that stuff and it made it harder to recruit. That's part of why you see me so much in the community and stuff now is I really self-aware or that's not the right word. My guys kind of checked me for one,
Yeah.
and then I kind of checked myself. I'm like, yeah, we need to be better, and when we're at our peak is when we should be more active, right? Versus
Yes.
less, which is
That's
I learned that the hard way.
that's the challenge.
Yeah.
And that's why it's good to surround yourself like my command staff. I've been fortunate enough in the last 5 years to promote the entire command staff. So those are all the both deputy chiefs and all the captains. I don't have yes men around me. They will tell me when I'm doing something stupid or give me their opinion. Yes, ultimately, it's going to be my decision. But thank God I have those guys who just say, hey, listen, because you can get caught up in it, or you're not paying
You're too
attention.
close to it, or
Pay attention to small stuff too.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
like,
That's probably one of the kind of maybe one of the pros of having come up through the ranks. I guess maybe it's too is those are probably people that you've had a lot of different. I don't know how long they've been around, but I imagine some of those people maybe have been at the lower tiers of ranks with you, and and they've had those experiences
yes,
too. And besides you just being a humble and relatable guy, like for me to be able to talk to you as a
yeah,
nobody, and you've always been humble and open to conversations stuff like that. So that's got to be huge for that. But coming up with your guys and having
yeah.
like, I'm sure you guys have got can talk some crap. Like
Yeah, I
you've been
mean,
around, so
600 employees, I'm not going to make everybody happy all the
yeah,
time, but it's like I said, and I tell people this too, growing up in the organization, like you said, the two hardest things for me right now, and it sounds crazy, but it's promotions because I know everybody, I grew up with everybody. So
yeah,
I'm going to make you Austin. I'd make you real happy because I'm going to make you a lieutenant, but I got 20 other guys that didn't get it,
yeah,
that I
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
So those are always difficult. I always just try to say, hey, who's the best person for this job right now? Who's going to help the organization more than anybody else right now?
Yeah.
And I do have this kind of plan in the back of my head as I move forward. Austin's not going to get it this time, but I might do that next time because I need this person here. You're trying to strategize.
Yeah.
When the church groups always ask me, what can we pray for you for? I always say strategy and wisdom,
Nice.
um, but that, and then discipline, you know, um, you have to terminate people sometimes, people that you might know their families, you might know their wife or their
And
kids.
known them
And
for 20, 30 years
yes,
potentially, right?
and
Yeah.
that's a hard thing to do. And you just, you know, try to make sure you be as consistent as you possibly can and do the right thing and be able to look at yourself the next morning,
That's another hard lesson. Like I just let a guy go that's been with me for like both these guys that had my back for like years, right? And with growing the business, I had to make some structural changes, some cultural, whatever, right? And to go to somebody that had your
Yeah.
back for that long and know that like this isn't working for us and for you. Like I think you could do better in your life if
Yeah.
you weren't in our little bubble. It's not easy. It's not easy. So and I could see like and you got much deeper bonds, I imagine, with some of the things you'd have to go through together. So I
Yeah.
can't
And you
imagine.
have to remember, my guys all have guns on their hip too. So it's even scary.
Yeah, I'm the only one that
Yeah.
have my. So I'm a marketing company, right? Which
Yeah.
I want to put a lot of emphasis on that in my conversations because that's where I'm most knowledgeable. What kind of like PR team, marketing team do you guys have in place? What kind of outreach efforts do you like consistently do? What kind of tools do you use in your
Yeah.
marketing? Are those things you can speak about?
Well, that's an easy one. You do the same thing. It's all social media, man. I mean, that's our bread and butter.
Yeah.
And we have a department within our department called the Community Services Bureau. So that's our community services. Those are the ones that do all the neighborhood watch meetings. They do all of our youth programs, whether it's our Explorers or the judo program or teen to teen and laps and all these other different programs. They all go through community services. But we also have a couple of people that do full time social media. And we also have collaborative assignments. Like you might have a graveyard guy, officer or sergeant that's trained on social media, as we want to make sure we're putting out the right things. That hey, at 3 a.m, this is a great arrest. I'm going to post this out. But most of it is all vetted and goes through Community Services Bureau. So and we realized early on it can't just be, hey, look at our neat little canine dog get coffee with a cop, right? Those are great, and we will always put those out there.
Fluff.
But we also want to put in there, hey, here's a good arrest, or hey, there's a string of home invasion robberies. Here's some safety tips you can do to keep yourself safe.
Right.
I try to use. We have a thing called message from the chief. I use those sparingly because we always get a lot of hits on that. Because I'm not going to use it just to say, hey, I'll be at Fairmount Park this weekend for this. I don't want to do that. Right. It's always got to be something big. We just did one last month. We did a huge sweep.
Dude, that one was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
It was, Operation Street Sweeper.
Yeah.
Made a lot of arrests, but it wasn't just to showcase the great work that we're doing. I wanted to explain to our community that, hey, we made 104 arrests and 103 are out of custody. So here's the other problem that we're having.
These were drug arrests.
Yes.
These were
sales of drugs.
You guys were in the trench keeping track of
these
guys for a while, right? And
you
nailed them, and then
and
the next day they're slinging again.
And I think that the community needs to be educated on that. I said, I'm not going to go out. I'm not going to slam the governor and the attorney general and this politician. I'm just saying, here's what we're dealing with. This is why you might see them out here next week again. We're going to still come out. We're still going to do our job. But there's a couple different messages that can be received from those. Not just, hey, your police department's here. They're going to do good work. We're going to continue to do these things. But we need help too. So educate yourself on how you should vote.
Yeah, absolutely. So from the business standpoint, and social media is huge, obviously, right? Especially now. It's a great tool. It's cost effective. It's cheap if you're doing it well. But you have to be careful, right? I know, I think you mentioned before, nobody's okay to say, during the home invasions, you were very careful about what information was shared, right? And some got shared that shouldn't have been.
Yes.
What kind of, we have brand guides in our industry. You can use this logo. You can't say this. You should say this. This is the feel. This, you know what I mean? What do you, I assume you do, but what kind of documentation and training do you give to the people that handle that, that maybe some of my viewers can learn from and how they approach their business with it?
We send all of our social media team to constant training. So there's always updated training, but it is very specific to law enforcement. As a police department, you can't say this, right? As a sheriff's department, you can't say that.
The laws changed. You couldn't post pictures.
Correct. You can't put you can't put booking photos in, So we have to make sure we're updated so we don't get in trouble or step on it with something that we shouldn't have put out. So it's a great point to bring up. We have to stay updated on all the current laws because you're right, they do change quite a bit.
But like a policy manual that somebody is constantly updating and then training, but also distributing. Like, this is your best practices you must follow.
Yep.
And that's maintained.
It's maintained. In fact, we just hosted a social media class a month ago at our station, and several agencies, even from LA and other counties, came for the updated training. So, like I said, we're a pretty big department. So I think everybody knows Ryan Railsback. He's our PIO. He's very savvy. He's trained people around him that are very savvy. If there's something that they're not sure about, they will come into my office along with the deputy chief, say, hey, here, I'm thinking about putting this out. And sometimes I'm very conscientious about when it gets to political matters. Like I said, we're apolitical, I try to stay out of that. But if there's certain things like this last street sweeper thing that I think the community needs to know about, I say this on a regular basis at community meetings, but I can't get 100,000 person platform just like that, like you can on social media. So, but you're right. You have to keep updated on the training, the do's and don'ts, what you can, but we also have to be creative. You have to be fresh and new all the time. And that, we do it the old fashioned way. We take ideas from other departments sometimes, hey, did you see this from Kansas? Did you see this from Tampa?
As every business owner should, right? You don't have to reinvent every wheel.
Sure.
You're not stealing, we do a lot of this, obviously, right? That's what we do. So I have a lot of conversations with people give us inspiration. You don't need to steal, don't directly copy, don't steal it, but if you see something that's working, it's working.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And study your competition, study people that are doing things that are successful and then learn from them.
Yeah.
Why would you deprive yourself of that knowledge? I mean, that's
Yep.
really what it boils down to.
And
So
we reciprocate too. We have a lot of agencies come. Like I said, our guys have been doing it for a long time, and we'll have other. Hey, what'd you do? How'd you do this? Or how'd you do that? And we're not afraid to ask either. So, especially in the law enforcement community, because we're all dealing with the same issues.
yeah, pretty positive. But having a group like what's really going on in Riverside County, I hope I didn't mix the names
Yeah,
up.
what's going on in Riverside
Yeah,
County?
no, really, really, don't do really, really's the wrong one. What is going on
And I
with
know those
Steve
guys. They're
Johnson
great.
and
They're great for us. I mean, and
yeah,
they usually, I don't know what it's called, tag or share
yeah,
all of our info.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so we appreciate it. And they have a huge platform
I
too.
think I saw the sweep from them before I saw it from you guys. I
Yeah,
mean, they've got 300. I think they're somewhere between 250 and 300,000
I think you're right.
followers now.
And then we have Dan Cupidos, another longtime friend of ours. He
Yeah,
has
he's a killer. He was doing
yeah,
that, and then he's a cool guy.
he has his website. He does things. So we're always appreciative of that. And then other agencies will share our info sometimes. So and just like we will for them. But no, it's great to have those groups, and I appreciate the fact that they kind of monitor that as well. Because there's always going to be keyboard warriors and drive-by comments and stuff like that. Which we're not going to say you can't put that, but
Right.
but some of them are just not appropriate.
No, yeah, absolutely. I see it all, and they're really good about monitoring that stuff. But I think a good point for that for our business viewers is finding those kind of partnerships on social
Yeah,
media. Like I'm part of a nonprofit night for vets. And they would share, like if our event's coming up, they'll share like those kind of relationships. Like if you went to the newspaper and tried or a postcard person, you wanted a 200,000 person distribution,
yeah,
you're talking tens of thousands of dollars potentially, right? But if you make the right partnerships on social media,
yeah,
it's free. Like
absolutely
you reach
free.
hundreds of thousands of people for free,
And that's the first thing I
and
think.
from a
Yeah,
trusted source. People
yeah,
that are following them are there for a reason, right? So not only are you getting a free or very inexpensive whatever distribution, it's being provided by a trusted source.
correct.
There's nothing better than that, I think, in business.
I think that's the first thing that's brought up in these social media classes, just how the cost value, how wonderful it is to have this for free at your fingertips. The one thing I should say too that we're always cognizant of or conscientious of is the bad part is sometimes misinformation. That's why I don't worry about what's going on Riverside. These other ones that we know, they know what they can and can't post or what they should.
Yeah.
We appreciate that. But I'll get texts sometimes where, hey, I saw this on next door, right? And
Yeah.
it could just be random comments that I worry about people spreading that information when that's what we have to stay on top of it. It should come from us. This really did happen in Orange Crest,
Yeah.
or this really did happen in La Sierra.
Yeah. Or
Um,
this isn't what they thought it was.
exactly.
You know?
Hey, there's 10 cops over here. I heard they shot and killed. No, that's not what happened. This is
Yeah.
what happened. So
Yeah.
that's another thing. We have to stay on top of all that stuff to make sure we're putting out real time information, whether it's through our app or our regular social media sites. We had an officer involved shooting the other day. First thing you see on our Atlas One app is, hey, there's police activity at this 100 block of Palm.
Yeah.
And then we'll give you more details as we get them.
Is Alice One a public app that people have
Yes,
to?
Atlas One.
Alice
Yeah,
One.
that's our app. And like I said, I don't. It's probably not as used as much as it should be, but I think more people just go back to the old fashioned, whether they on an Instagram or Facebook or
My man's
whatever.
Thor all day long. Why is there a helicopter? Why
Yes.
I was like,
Yeah.
I mean, if it doesn't involve you, don't worry about it. It's
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. I get it. I still get. That's the other thing about being from here and knowing a lot of people being through my whole career.
Oh yeah.
'Cause I think was it last week we had RCC went on lockdown for a minute, and I just got blown up for
Oh,
an
I
hour straight.
imagine.
And I get it.
Yeah.
If you have kids there, you have friends, I get it. It's
But
just
you're dealing with that
yeah,
situation.
yeah,
Even like the street sweep. I almost tried to text like great, which I'm sure you would
yeah.
appreciate, but I was like, man, I bet this man has so many texts.
Oh yeah,
I
it's
try
like I
to
said,
be
I do get them a lot, and I appreciate it. It's always nice to get a compliment, but when it's in the middle of something, it's a little bit harder. Like I
yeah,
said, we had an officer involved shooting the other day, and I had a lot of texts. What's going on? What's going on? What's like?
yeah, yeah,
I think they'll understand if I don't get back to them right away.
yeah. I'll probably text you something at my kid's school, but I'll understand if you don't answer.
Yeah,
'Cause
and
that's
that's
gonna be
why
my
it's
gut reaction. Like, who do I know that can help
yeah,
me?
and
'Cause
that's
I'll
why I
drive
brought
through
it
it
up
so much myself.
is how important for us for our social media folks to make sure they're getting that information as quick as possible.
Yeah, to your leadership, the culture, some of your budgeting, your accountability, your KPIs. Um, I guess if you could give one piece of advice to business owners, and this isn't our focus, but any business owner, um, from your perspective, and it doesn't have to be something that's going to get financial gain or whatever, but what piece of advice would you give business owners, from your perspective, that you think would help them or would help their community?
That's a good question. I guess a couple pieces of advice I've got over the years, and I kind of said it briefly, but in our organization, pay attention to the small things, because sometimes when you get to that level, you're like, I pay people to do that, right? No, you need to try to pay attention to the small things. But I think what I've learned uh, over years is being comfortable in my own skin and being my own person. Um, and developing your own, like, whether it's a leadership style or your personality. And it took me a while to be like, hey, I'm a chief now. I need to act like Frank Reagan from Blue Bloods. Like, no, that's not my personality, right?
Right.
Um, but you still have to. I just, if you can ever get to the point where you're comfortable in your own skin, you can have your own leadership style and pass that on instead of trying to be like somebody else. I think it's important for me to my command staff and all of our officers understand where my heart is. So, and I've seen that as the years have gone on, to where they know how I'm going to feel about the way this was handled, and that I appreciate that. But I think it's just being not afraid to tell your folks what your vision is. Not just the mission statement that's posted on our websites, but this is how I feel about this is how important the community is to me. How we treat people, that is a huge priority for me, because that goes along with the trust, like I said earlier. But not being afraid to be your own person and tell people how you feel, and then being humble at the same time, not be afraid to accept criticism or advice. And that's when you get in trouble. It's like, I've told people, when you get to a certain level, it's like it sounds crazy, but policing a 350,000 person city, big decisions are the easiest ones, right? We're trained for those. If I ever lose perspective how one of those decisions will affect just one family, right, or one person, then you lose your humanity, and you can't really afford that. So I think I'm pretty good about putting myself in check. If I ever think, oh, we're great, we're doing this and that, I'll always try to find a problem for that solution,
Yeah.
or just to try to get better. But I just think being conscientious of yourself, your style, and being comfortable, like I said, in your own skin.
Yeah, not jumping on the latest TikTok leadership style.
Yeah, and that's another thing, Austin. And I've read, just like you, I've read dozens of leadership books over the years, whether I had to for a class, or I had a friend who actually just wrote one a couple months ago, and I said, yeah, I'll read it. And they're interesting. I get something out of a little bit out, but I found out a lot of times once you get the concept, it's kind of the same concept, but different names of it, you know? And I do think obviously it can be learned. You can be born with it, but you're right. I have gotten away from, I want to go to this leadership seminar, or I want to read this literature. I still read them.
Yeah.
But
don't come back and try to fake whatever was in that book.
Correct.
It's not sustainable. It's not you.
No, it's not you.
Yeah,
and that's my
rules or nuggets or processes that you can adopt and apply, but with your style and
yes,
you don't have to transform who you are to try to meet the latest trend, I guess.
That's exactly what I do. It's just, if I get a little nugget here, I didn't know that, I'm going to try that. But I never want to go overboard where it's like, I'm going to take all this guy's advice and they're going to look at me like, that's not you.
Yeah.
People know that right away. That's not your style. That's not you.
Yeah. And then you become two-faced. I mean, it creates trust. I mean, trust in your people, trust in the community. So, so again, thank you, sir. I really appreciate you taking the time. Again, I really appreciate that you do take the time to engage.
It's my pleasure.
We talk all the time. I always am like, man, I don't even know why this guy's responding to me. But you take the time for that. And I think that that's part of it's not just a me thing. I think that's a big part of your leadership, and that's huge. And again, just really thank you for being here. I think you shared some great information for the viewers. And when we get this out there, I think they'll learn from it. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.